So we're trying a new format out here, try and get video out a little bit quicker. Some things need a lot of editing. Lord knows my stuff needs a lot of editing. But I saw some things on Facebook which I took a bit of a few moments to answer on the Global Cycle Networking blog around the need for latex tubes. The typical answers you get are, if someone's writing in saying, I want to know about latex tubes, quite often you'll get a lot of answers of marginal gains, it's not worth it, need to train harder, etc. And it's like, well, thank you for taking your time to waste your time and my time reading something that's about as constructive as a slap in the face with a wet fish. So, I thought I'd do this quick video. I'm Christian Borman. I've been blogging and posting about cars, bikes, food, tech, and all sorts of things for years. So I figured it's time to start vlogging. Yeah, if I were you, I'd run for the hills. Or stick around and see what happens. The main advantages and disadvantages of latex tubes I've ridden tubeless tubs, road tubes, I've ridden the old narrow rims, I've ridden steel old rims, I've ridden alloy rims, I've ridden carbon rims, I've ridden aero rims. I have a confession, I do spend a lot of money on rubber and on tyres, rubber tyres that is. And so I've learnt a lot over the time, and so here we go. Latex tubes, the ones I've tried are these ones. This is the Michelin Pit Stop, which is green, very nice. And these are the Vittoria ones, which are pink. And I honestly can't remember why I bought one or the other, but you can't obviously see that here, and I'm not going to bother getting scales out because life's too short to get scales out. But manufacturers claim these are about 70-80 grams. Which is not very light, not very heavy. If you go to these kind of Continental Supersonic, which are probably, for me, the best Butyl tyres that you can get. I mean, look at them, they're tiny. I mean, all this mass versus that mass, but this literally only weighs about 50 grams. It's very small. The problem with this is, I find, is that even with all the care that I do, and I always talc wheels, you should always see this, a lot of nice bit of talc. Proper Pro mechs always use talc, and I'll tell you why to do that in a second. The good tubes from Specialized come pre-talced for a reason. But the problem is with these is you can pinch them very, very, very easily when you're installing them in a nice warm kitchen, for example, with a glass of wine on a relaxing Sunday evening. Not that I'd ever do that, of course, but you imagine when you're on the side of the road, your fingers are freezing, you've got some idiots driving past you way too close and way too fast because a few seconds of their life are worth both their and the safety of the riders that they're passing, of course. But it's very difficult and they're very easy to pinch. I, on one attempt, managed to get through about 3 of these, and there was 2 reasons for that. One of them, I was very, very tired. The other one is that there was a small hole in the side of the casing, and every time I pumped them up, it seemed fine, but then you start riding and they would come out of the side. Had to put a $5, I think it was a €20 note in at the time, which was exciting. I then was so tired I had to open up again, take that €20 note out to buy myself some food and water, and then put a €5 note back in the change. I do have a picture of that somewhere, which by the time I finally took that €5 note out, it was basically powder, but it worked. Now, latex tubes, the advantages are, for me, that, look at this one. This has been probably pinched quite badly by either a nipple or a spoke hole, if you don't want to use innuendo. Still working, where one of these probably would have ruptured through there. Here you can see another hole. It seems to have held up quite well. But notice how supple they are. They are super supple. Now, if you're one of these people who are perfectly happy with the kind of tyres that come on a bicycle, like this OEM one, which it's not a bad tyre, but it's very heavy, and it's meant for, it came on a commuter bike for the city, and it's meant to do that, not puncture for people who don't really know about tyres. But it's very heavy, it's about as supple as a brick wall, and it is absolute junk, and it's going on eBay, where it should be. However, if you go for nice supple tyres, like the GPS 4000s or the 5000s, the GP4000s or the 5000s that have replaced them, then you will find an advantage in ride quality and other things from a latex tube. Basically, they're so supple that they will deform better to the road. You will get the kind of quality that you got from tubs in the olden days. Now, one thing that has evolved tremendously over time, as you may or may not be able to see from these wheels that I have here. So these zip wheels that I've got are, they I think were about 15 to 17, no, they're 17 millimeters internal. The Mavics that I had on before were about 15 millimeters internal, and the ones before that 13 millimeters. Now, on 13 millimeter internal rims, 15 millimeter internal rims, with a 21 or 23C tyre, you don't get that much benefit from latex tubes. But it is better, because at 120 psi, the first time I rode I'd ridden road bikes all in my youth, but they were mainly steel ones. I got my first carbon road bike in 2009 for my Olympics. I've been doing mountain biking in between then. And I rode down South Carriage Drive because there was going to be the triathlon in London. And I honestly thought my fillings were going to fall out. And so the first thing I did was, the first thing I actually did was go and buy some tubs. But tubs are a pain in the neck. I've ridden them before. I rode them again. They take time to get on. And in the meantime, I went and bought some latex tubes. Immediate difference. I could actually do 50, 60 kilometers an hour down the downhill bit of South Carriage Drive in Hyde Park without my teeth feeling like they were physically being shaken in my head. Fast forward now to 17 millimeter internal rims, or these 3T ones, which are 20 millimeters internal, very nice. And I'm now running 23 millimeter internals, and my next wheels will be 25 millimeters internal. Be more on that later. With the latex tubes and a 25 mil supple tyre, they come out at about 28, which is lovely, but they ride really well. And touch wood, this table of course is wood, I've never had a puncture with latex tubes. Now there is a reason for that, and this is one side thing I'm going to get onto, why you should never puncture. If you see the inside of these tyres, which I took off of some head Ardennes Black, which I just sold on eBay, you will notice that there's a lot of talc, and that is important. You will see quite often when you've changed a punctured tyre at the side of the road, your friends will have to peel the inner tube from the tyre. If you have to peel your inner tube from the tyre, it is stuck to the tyre, and any hard braking, any rapid acceleration, any kind of serious manoeuvre on the bike, like for example if a wheel comes out and you have to correct it, is likely to lead to a puncture when you least really want it. And so talc lessens that friction between the tyre and the wall. It also keeps them dry. I'm not going to do it now, but you can do a little experiment at home. You can bead some water over a tyre with talc, and literally it stays in beads over the top like it was Gore-Tex. Very important as well, because inevitably water will get in through your spoke holes, etc., and the talc just creates a barrier. But also it makes less friction. Now, the friction between the tyre and the tube is what causes drag and costs you watts. If you have talc, they're allowed to move a little bit and they will be softer. Now, you don't need to be a watt weenie to appreciate that. It actually translates into better grip and better comfort. So better grip, better comfort, and a suppler ride is definitely a reason for having a latex tube. Another reason is, as I said, with these lovely Conti Supersonics, even with my best intentions and without wine in a nice warm environment, I have pinched these, putting them in. They're about 50 grams. You have these horrible old tubes. This is one that came with a cheap bicycle. I think it came with those wheels. Now, everybody seems to think the only disadvantage of this is weight. It's not. They're about as supple, again, as a brick wall. Look at that, it's beautiful. Look at this, it just flexes. This is as rigid as my first videos on YouTube. Yeah, junk on those. Ooh. Did not mean to knock that helmet off. Don't get carried away. So, yeah, no punctures, touch wood, to date. Less resistance, better ride quality. Generally, I mean, I really, really like them. Now, there are downsides. Yes, you hear him say, he seems so in love with his funky coloured inner tubes. The downsides are, they do disinflate very quickly. So that piece of junk that I just threw off will never disinflate. It will never disinflate because it is like having old, solid rubber tyres. But these kind of tubes will disinflate in about a week, I'd say, and these will disinflate every day. Now, get over it. If you are serious about your riding and you are buying wheels like you have on this table and bikes like I have, and you cannot be bothered playing with the pressure on your tyres, you may as well go and play golf. Go and do something that is designed for old people who don't care. Sorry, golfers, I couldn't resist that. My dear old grandfather was a golfer, and unfortunately, he used to take me golfing. I just didn't see it, but maybe I will when, I'm too old to cycle, like when I'm dead. But they do disinflate. Now, for many people, that is a disadvantage. For me, I see it as an advantage and an opportunity. One of them, you should be checking the pressure of your tyres every time you go out. There is nothing worse than the pain in the ass cyclist who arrives at your 8 o'clock meeting. I usually arrive at 8:05 because I'm fashionably late anyway. That I kind of get away with, mostly. But if you turn up at 8 or even 5 to 8 and you need assistance with your tyres, you're a pain. Pump them up the night before, check them in the morning. It's just part of checking if your tyres are okay. You give the tyres a spin, just see that you are not going to go hurtling down a road at 60 or 70 kilometers an hour with the most important contact point in a bad condition. It's just very, very simple. If you can't be bothered pumping up a wheel, don't do cycling. But secondly, what I like about latex, so this will lose pressure in a week, right? So you go out for a ride and you set it at 90 psi, give or take temperature differences, it will still be at 90 psi. These, you go out at 90 psi, and by the end of your ride, you may only be at 88. Those small differences in pressure are quite good because you get to learn. You get to learn a lot about how your tyres work at different pressures. And it is good because the amount of times I've followed friends of mine with their tyres still at 120 psi, skidding on roundabouts trying to follow me, and they still, after having a slide and nearly crapping themselves, they still will not drop the pressure in their tyres. It's nuts. It's just the science is out there. There are rolling resistances, etc., that all show that lower pressure now creates lower rolling resistance and is faster. But there are some people who are still chasing that 1 watt that it does not exist by running too much pressure. Latex tubes, that doesn't happen. I'm sure there are people who have latex tubes just because they're more expensive and are morons, but in general, latex tubes make you, I think, a better cyclist. And I generally, if I am running, I run both tubeless and tubed together for various reasons. Bicycles that I don't use very often, I don't really put tubeless on because it does need maintenance, and I can do that in another video. But also, and I did run tubs for a good period of time when I was much younger, and then when tyres, in the sort of from 2009 to 2013, when clinchers still weren't that great, I still ran them, but I don't run them anymore because I am not a dinosaur. But they still have their place. If you love tubs, get on with tubs. I mean, obviously pros love tubs because, hey, guess what? They've got a mechanic who does all the maintenance for them. And if they get a puncture at the side of the road, a car will come with another wheel. Not a fix, another wheel. But for us mere mortals, tubs, for me, honestly, I mean, they just don't make sense unless you live in, I mean, for example, there are parts of Italy and Spain, for example, that I know that have beautiful, super smooth roads. Puncture is just a kind of, what are you doing? And yeah, maybe they're great. But in London, where I have to ride out of London through the bus lanes where it seems on a Friday and Saturday night, when I'm going riding on a Saturday and Sunday morning, the game when you left the pub was how much broken glass can you leave in the bike lane. And then when you get out into the Surrey Hills, where I go quite a lot, there are flints. Flints are awful. There's a reason cavemen used them for hunting. they still inflict serious damage on your tyres. I just couldn't use tubs. But I do use tubeless a lot, and I do use tubed tyres because they have an advantage. If you don't ride very often, a tube is a much better experience. And I honestly think that you wouldn't do yourself any harm in running latex unless you are so bad at maintenance and you don't own a floor pump, for example. There are people who can get on perfectly like that. Quick thing I will say as well, so let's get these lovely, I'm not going to throw these away because they're lovely latex. I honestly don't have a rubber fetish problem, I don't think. Anyway. And yeah, these were lovely. These were the Continental Grand Prix TT tyres. I hope Continental make these again. They were the slickest bit of rubber I have ever had on any wheel, let alone a lovely stiff aero wheel. They were very good. I couldn't run them on the back because they did puncture. And these, I do have normal, I don't have latex tubes in, I have good old Conti Supersonics. And there's a reason for that. One of them is that I can easily get Butyl tubes with exactly the size of valve that I need, and that is important. And especially because I originally started running 808s on my Shiv, but then I didn't like the front wheel. The zips are very, very good. I'd say they're probably the best aero wheel that I have run in wind. But I've come to a conclusion now, and this is going to be maybe something else, but I'll tell you now, that for me, and I've seen a lot of pros, and I saw a lot of pros with like either a disc or an 808 on the back, very deep section wheels or solid wheels, disc wheels, and I saw a lot of these pros that were running as low as 35mm on the front, 35mm profile. And I'll be honest with you, I have run now the Campi Bora Ultras. I have run these amazing aluminium discs from 3T that came in my Strada Pro, and I now have some humped wheels, and I have ridden some other 35mm, and 35 for me is the sweet spot for a profile tyre that doesn't have the wind causing you concern or catching you out when you're riding, which is important. So generally, these another great tyre that I've used are these Pirellis that came again on the Strada Pro wheels, and I should be using a bit more of those. But honestly, the Conti 5000s, both the tubeless and the tube versions, are so good. Now, final disadvantage of the latex that I want to get to before you think, will this guy ever end, is the contamination issue. Now, when I started having these, I used to keep them in little boxes, hoping that they wouldn't get damaged and stuff like that. As you can see now, these have been on the floor in my basement. They're not as fragile as people say. However, having said that, there are some advantages to using wheels that have no spoke drill, or I think I'll use this one because it is pretty close. Having a good rim tape. If you have some good rim tape, then you are more likely to keep contaminants out. And again, look in here, use the talc. Talc is amazing. And finally, I say I've never punctured with these. I don't really puncture very much with these. We had some guys on our rides who would say that nobody's allowed to come without a GP, the gator skins. And it's like, you don't really need gator skins. And you'd have people who would arrive for their ride with a punctured gator skin. I'd go and they'd come out. And the reason is for that is that if you fix a puncture at the side of the road, do not leave it. When you get home, you have to get home and clean it. Because when you fix a puncture at the side of the road, A, you lose all of the talc, but you get loads of humidity in and you will get debris in. And quite often, with your cold fingers and the cold, you will not have managed to get whatever it is that contributed to or created the puncture out of the tyre. You can try, you can run your fingers, but you are cold, you've been on the bars which have been vibrating, you just do not have the feel in your fingers as you do when you're on a Sunday evening in your house with a glass of wine in your kitchen, for example. I don't have any wine at the moment, but it is a little early for me still. But so if you do fix a puncture at the side of the road, for the love of God, when you get home, anytime you can, if you don't have time, take it to your local LBS. They will not need an appointment generally. For a £5 to a tenner in UK money, €5-10, $5-10, they will fix it for you in a clean environment, and hopefully if they're good they will put talc in. If not, just tell them. You don't want to go into that conversation, but if not, just fix it yourself. I mean, you can do it whilst on a video conference, maybe not, but on an audio conference you can. Not that I've done that ever, but you can do it. Get rid of the debris, get it clean, preferably get a clean tube, and do go over your old tubes and patch them. There's so many people who give me lectures on veganism and saving the planet and recycling, and then you see them throw out a perfectly... Do you know how much effort goes into one of these tubes? Do you know how good patches are these days? Patch them. Or get latex, because I've never needed to patch them. Never. Amazing. So yeah, do make sure that you get some talc in, make sure that it's clean, make sure that it's all dry, and honestly, I have ridden throughout the Surrey Hills in all sorts of weather, through the Chiltern Hills in all sorts of weather. GP 4000s, which are beautifully supple and nice, as opposed to the Gator Skin, which is like what I threw over there. And it's a great tyre, the Gator, but it's I mean, it's great if you're commuting, but for racing, it's just they're just not anywhere near as nice. And if you install a tube, either latex or butyl properly, or better still, move to tubeless, you really should be able to get away with really... I mean, tyres now are so good, especially the ones with the Vectron brakers. So there you go. I hope you found this useful. I definitely found it a lot easier to edit than some of my other videos. As you see, my skills are not really there yet, but also I'm still editing on a MacBook, which is probably 4 or 5 times slower than the latest MacBook Pros, but that will change very shortly. Yeah, I've got some other things that I'll try and get out quickly as well. And yeah, stay tuned, subscribe, do all of those things that you need to do to make sure that you get the next ones, because there's a lot of things in terms of maintenance. I know I do varied videos, but honestly, take all my videos in a joint, and I hope they will help you in one way or another. And if they don't, well then, stop watching. Do subscribe anyway, please.